our planet is still filled with questions no one can fully answer. Colossal drawings that only make sense from the sky, their meanings still uncertain. Stone monuments so advanced they seem to surpass the tools and logic of their time. Many of these sites continue to divide experts. What were they built for? By whom? And how exactly? How did ancient people move stone blocks weighing tens or even hundreds of tons? Did an entire body of knowledge quietly disappear with the passing of centuries? Today, we journey through some of the most mysterious places on Earth. Sites that still feel as if they're hiding secrets they're not ready to reveal. Durupinar Archaeological Site, Noah's Ark, Turkey. The Ararat region has long been tied to the biblical story of the Great Flood. A remote land of harsh climate, high peaks, and enduring legend. According to the Old Testament, when the waters finally receded, Noah's Ark came to rest upon a mountain in this very area. In 1959, a Turkish military pilot flying a reconnaissance mission captured aerial photos of an elongated boat-like formation on the ground near Mount Ararat. The structure measures roughly 150 meters long, remarkably close to the 300 cubits of length described for the Ark in the Bible. Since then, many have argued that this might be the physical remnant of the Ark mentioned in Scripture. However, most geologists and archaeologists maintain that the formation is a natural geological feature shaped by erosion and tectonic processes rather than human hands. Fieldwork and excavation have been limited by steep terrain, political tensions, and unforgiving weather conditions. As a result, Durupinar remains an open case, either an oddly suggestive rock formation that triggers the imagination, or a silent clue tied to one of humanity's oldest and most retold stories. Giant of Tarapacá, Chile. Across the high dry plateau of Chile's Atacama Desert, one of the driest regions on Earth, a massive human-like figure stretches across a desert hillside. The Giant of Tarapacá, the largest known anthropomorphic geoglyph in the world. The figure is associated with pre-Columbian cultures, such as the Aymara, yet its precise age and purpose remain unclear. Local legends suggest it could represent a powerful warrior, while others interpret the rays around its head as signs of a divine or celestial being. Some researchers believe the geoglyph served as a kind of landmark for caravans moving across ancient trade routes that crossed the desert. In this view, the giant would have been a reference point both for travelers on the ground and for the gods above. Further north, other geoglyph groups like the Chiza figures show a rich visual language, people, animals, and geometric symbols etched into the slopes of the surrounding hills. They may have operated as messages for those passing through and as ritual signs directed toward deities in the sky, a form of communication we still haven't fully decoded. Pyramids of Giza, Egypt. On the Giza Plateau, at the edge of the Sahara, the pyramids of Khufu, Khafra, and Menkaure have stood for thousands of years, withering sandstorms, earthquakes, and the erosion of time. They are more than royal tombs. They are statements of what ancient Egypt could organize, build, and imagine. Greek historian Herodotus described the pyramids as burial places for pharaohs, based on what he heard from Egyptian priests of his era. Yet enormous questions remain. How did the builders transport and assemble the roughly 2.3 million stone blocks that make up the Great Pyramid of Khufu with such astonishing precision? One widely accepted hypothesis proposes that workers used straight or spiraling ramps to drag the blocks up to higher levels of the structure. If construction really took about 20 years, they would have had to move and position over 300 stones per day, each weighing between 2 and more than 15 tons. A logistical and organizational feat on a monumental scale. The alignment of the pyramids with the stars of Orion's belt suggests a deep connection with Egyptian religion and astronomy. In front of Khafra's pyramid sits the Great Sphinx, a lion's body topped with a human head, carved directly from the natural bedrock. No surviving ancient text describes its construction, leaving its original date and purpose still debated. The human face is commonly thought to represent Pharaoh Khafra, but this remains an educated guess based on style and location. Giza therefore stands not only as Egypt's symbol, but also as one of humanity's greatest unanswered engineering and spiritual riddles. Stonehenge, United Kingdom. On England's Salisbury Plain, Stonehenge rises from the grass as a ring of massive standing stones capped by horizontal lintels. The monument was begun around 5,000 years ago and modified in multiple stages over centuries. From its earliest phases, Stonehenge appears to have combined funerary functions with ritual or ceremonial uses. Burial pits and cremated remains found around the site indicate that it was associated with the dead and with ancestral rites. Some of the largest stones weigh up to 50 tons and are thought to have been quarried in the West Woods area about 25 kilometers away. How they were transported across uneven ground and wetlands remains uncertain. Log rollers, sledges, ropes, and carefully prepared tracks are among the most discussed possibilities. The arrangement of the stones aligns with the sunrise at the summer solstice and the sunset at the winter solstice. This suggests that Stonehenge functioned partly as a solar marker, a way to track key points in the yearly cycle. And perhaps to coordinate rituals tied to the changing seasons. To this day, scholars still debate whether Stonehenge was primarily an observatory, a temple, a cemetery, or a blend of all three. Its form is visible and familiar, but its full meaning remains gently out of reach. Moai, Easter Island, Chile. On the isolated Pacific island of Rapa Nui, better known as Easter Island, nearly 900 monumental stone figures. The Moai stand in silent lines, most of them facing inland. These statues, with their oversized heads and elongated features, are the most iconic legacy of the island's ancient inhabitants. The majority of the Moai were placed along the coast on ceremonial platforms, seemingly watching over the communities behind them. Many wear pukao, large red stone topknots, believed to symbolize status power or sacred authority. About half of all known Moai are found at Rano Raraku, a volcanic crater that served as the main quarry and carving site. Here, hundreds of statues remain frozen in different stages of completion figures, still attached to the bedrock finished sculptures awaiting transport, all suggesting that work ended suddenly. Popular theories point to resource depletion, environmental stress, and internal conflict on the island as possible reasons why the statue building tradition stopped. How the Rapa Nui people managed to move and erect these multi-ton figures is still not fully understood. Modern experiments have reproduced parts of the process, but often with more people and better tools than were likely available at the time. The moai stand as both a triumph of artistry and organization, and a reminder of how fragile complex societies can be when their environment and resources are pushed to the limit. Blythe Intaglios, United States. On a barren plateau near the Colorado River in the American West, a series of giant figures called the Blythe Intaglios have been scraped into the desert surface by removing the dark top layer of gravel to reveal lighter soil below. These designs depict human shapes and animals and are attributed to indigenous peoples roughly 1,000 years ago. From ground level, only fragments of the figures are visible, but from the air, their full forms become clear and striking. Their meaning remains uncertain. Many scholars believe they represent God's mythological beings, or ancestral spirits, and may have been used in ritual practices linked to creation stories, fertility, or tribal identity. Today, the intaglios are fenced off to prevent damage, but they continue to fascinate visitors and researchers alike. They feel like messages written directly onto the desert floor. Massive signatures of cultures that left very few written records behind. Nazca Lines and Coastal Geoglyph, Peru. On the parched Nazca Plateau of southern Peru, hundreds of immense designs stretch across the desert. Straight lines running for kilometers, spirals, trapezoids, and stylized figures of animals like birds, monkeys, and spiders. The Nazca people created these geoglyphs about 1,500 years ago by removing the dark oxidized stones on the surface to expose the lighter earth beneath. From the ground, many of the shapes are hard to recognize. Only from the air do their full patterns appear. The purpose of the Nazca lines is still debated. Some researchers view them as a kind of astronomical calendar aligned with celestial events and seasonal cycles. Others think they functioned as sacred pathways routes that processions would follow during religious ceremonies. One particularly mysterious figure, known as the astronaut, shows a human-like form with large eyes and an upraised hand. It may represent a shaman, a ritual specialist, or a symbolic messenger to the gods above. On a sandy hillside closer to the Pacific coast, another enormous geoglyph, often compared to a candelabra or trident, looks out toward the sea. It is often associated with the Paracas culture, though there is no firm agreement on its creators or exact age. Because it is easily visible from offshore, some scholars believe it may have served as a landmark for ancient sailors navigating the coastline. Palpa geoglyphs, Peru. Unlike the Nazca lines on flat desert ground, many of the geoglyphs in the Palpa region were inscribed on hillsides, making them easier to see from nearby vantage points. Some of these designs are culturally connected to Nazca, but most are thought to have been created by the older Paracas and Topara cultures. Figures in Palpa often show more detailed expressions and body postures, including a well-known group nicknamed the Family, featuring large-eyed characters surrounded by animals and possibly mythical beings. One striking image is believed to depict an orca, a killer whale, but with features that are not anatomically accurate, combining animal traits with symbolic or supernatural elements. This suggests that the artists were not simply recording nature, but encoding beliefs, myths, and a spiritual worldview into the landscape. Together, the Palpa geoglyphs form another chapter in the long visual tradition of Peru's ancient desert cultures, a chapter we are only beginning to read. Monte Alban, Mexico. At its height, Monte Alban was home to an estimated 35,000 inhabitants, functioning as a complex, multi-ethnic urban center that dominated the surrounding valleys. It was not only a political capital, but also a religious, economic, and cultural hub for the Zapotec world and neighboring peoples. Over time, however, the city began to lose influence. By around the 9th century, Monte Alban was largely deserted. Scholars attribute its decline to shifting alliances, internal tensions, and the rise of competing regional powers. What remains today is a silent city of terraces, pyramids, and plazas, a mountaintop acropolis that once commanded an entire civilization and now watches over an empty horizon. Yonaguni structures, Japan. Off the shores of Yonaguni Island at Japan's western edge lies one of the country's most debated underwater enigmas. Submerged terraces, sharp angles, and towering walls form structures that some have likened to a Japanese Atlantis. Discovered by divers in 1986, the formations immediately stirred controversy. Their clean lines and right angles resemble staircases, platforms, and straight-edged facades that look strikingly artificial. To many, this suggests the remains of a lost settlement swallowed by the sea thousands of years ago. Geologists, however, point out that the local sandstone naturally fractures along straight planes, creating blocky shapes and tiered layers similar to those seen at Yonaguni. In this view, the site is a dramatic example of natural erosion, not the work of vanished builders. The truth remains unresolved. What divers see today is a submerged labyrinth of steps and ledges where every corner raises the same question. Did nature carve this alone, or did human hands once shape what the ocean now hides? Rocamadour, France. Rocamadour appears to cling impossibly to a limestone cliff. Its houses, chapels, and sanctuaries, stacked one above another as if they'd grown directly out of the rock. The settlement suffered heavy destruction during the Wars of Religion in the 16th century. When conflict swept through this part of France, centuries later, painstaking restoration brought Rocamadour back to life, restoring its role as a major pilgrimage destination and spiritual landmark. According to tradition, the site is named after Saint Amador, a hermit said to have lived in the rock face. His body was supposedly discovered centuries after his death, incorrupt and intact, reinforcing the village's sacred status. High on the cliff stands the Chapel of Our Lady, which houses a revered Black Madonna statue. Pilgrims climb steep stairways to reach this sanctuary, seeing in its darkened wooden figure a symbol of protection, miracles, and enduring faith carved into stone. Teotihuacan, Mexico. In the highlands of central Mexico, Teotihuacan rises as a vast stone grid of pyramids, plazas, and avenues. The imposing Pyramid of the Sun and Pyramid of the Moon are linked by a broad processional route known today as the Avenue of the Dead. Although the city is named after the Teotihuacan culture, its true founders remain unknown. The absence of deciphered inscriptions means we still do not know what these people called themselves or how they understood their own world. The layout of the city and the orientation of its pyramids show careful alignment with celestial bodies and cardinal directions revealing advanced knowledge of astronomy and an obsession with cosmic order. By the 8th century, despite its size and influence, Teotihuacan was abruptly abandoned. Fire's internal unrest or external invasions may have contributed to its fall, but no single explanation has been proven. Centuries later, the Aztecs encountered the silent ruins and named the place Teotihuacan, the place where gods came into being. For them, this empty city was already ancient, a site where divine forces had once walked among humans. Separang, China Guj Kingdom. Separang, once capital of the Guj Kingdom in western Tibet, rose between the 10th and 17th centuries. As a center of politics, religion, and trade in the high Himalayas, the city was built atop a pyramid-shaped hill, with palaces, temples, and dwellings connected through a network of tunnels and carved passageways. From a distance, it looks like a multi-tiered fortress grown out of dust and rock. In 1624, Portuguese missionaries arrived searching for rumored Christian kingdoms hidden beyond the Himalayas. Some historians speculate that tales of Separang may have contributed to the later legend of Shangri-La, a hidden spiritual realm in the mountains. Because of its isolation, archaeological work at Separang has been limited. What remains is a ghost city of eroded walls and fading murals. Its full history still locked behind time, altitude, and silence. Machu Picchu, Peru. Machu Picchu is often said to have been discovered by explorer Hiram Bingham in 1911. Yet local farmer Agustin Lizarraga had already visited the site years earlier, leaving his name carved into one of its structures. Most scholars agree the citadel was constructed in the 15th century, likely under the rule of Emperor Pachacuti. Because the Incas left no written records explaining it, the exact purpose of Machu Picchu remains uncertain. Many believe it served as a royal retreat or a ceremonial center after Pachacuti's conquests. Perched on a narrow ridge between steep cliffs and in a region prone to earthquakes and landslides, Machu Picchu required sophisticated engineering. Terraces stabilize the slopes and provide farmland, while stonework with tightly fitted joints resists seismic shocks. Channels and fountains distribute rainwater throughout the site with remarkable efficiency. It is thought that epidemics brought by Europeans, such as smallpox, reached the region before direct contact, leading to depopulation and eventual abandonment. Today, the city appears to blend seamlessly into the mountains, a stone echo of an empire that vanished without a written farewell. Chimalacatlan, Mexico. Hidden in the rugged landscapes of central Mexico, Chimalacatlan remains one of Mesoamerica's most enigmatic sites. The civilization that planned and built it is still unknown, though its architecture shows striking similarities to constructions attributed to the Olmecs. The complex includes temples, plazas, and areas that appear to have been associated with the Mesoamerican ballgame. Massive stone blocks precisely fitted without mortar suggest a level of engineering rarely seen in North America. Its location, surrounded by cliffs, thick vegetation, and difficult access, has led to debates about its function. Some researchers see in it a fortress or defensive stronghold. Others propose astronomical uses with elevated platforms and sightlines that may have been used to track celestial events, because systematic excavations are still limited. Chimalacatlan remains a puzzle, a stone city without a clearly identified people, standing quietly between jungle and rock. Perperikon, Bulgaria. Perperikon, sometimes called the Bulgarian Machu Picchu, is an ancient city carved directly into a rocky hilltop. Evidence shows human presence here since the Bronze Age around 7,000 years ago, and the site continued to hold importance through classical Roman and medieval periods. Many scholars believe Perperikon housed a great sanctuary of Dionysus, the god of wine and ecstasy in the Greek world. Ancient authors describe oracular rites involving fire and wine, rituals that match what archaeologists have inferred from the remains. Because of these associations, Perperikon is thought to have been a major center of prophecy and visions, where rulers and travelers sought guidance before making crucial decisions. Today, stairways, rooms, altars, and cisterns are all hewn from the bare rock, forming a hanging city that blurs the line between natural formation and human design. A sacred landscape sculpted for the purpose of speaking with the divine. Valley of the Kings, Egypt. On the west bank of the Nile near Luxor, the Valley of the Kings served for roughly 5 centuries as the burial ground of pharaohs, princes, and high officials. Some Egyptologists suggest that the pyramid-shaped profile of the nearby peak inspired the choice of this location, a natural substitute for the monumental tombs of earlier dynasties. Although almost all royal tombs were looted in antiquity, their frescoed corridors and chambers still reveal the grandeur and religious complexity of the New Kingdom. Walls are covered with spell scenes and symbols from funerary texts such as the Book of the Dead, intended to guide the king safely through the afterlife. The most famous burial here is that of Tutankhamun, whose tomb was found in 1922, remarkably intact, filled with thousands of objects and the now iconic solid gold mask. Afterward, tales of a pharaoh's curse spread quickly, linking sudden deaths and strange incidents to the disturbance of the king's eternal rest. A mix of myth coincidence and human fascination with the forbidden. Dendera Temple, Egypt. Dedicated to Hathor, goddess of love music and joy, the temple complex at Dendera is among the best preserved in all of Egypt. Travelers began visiting the site in the mid-19th century. But large portions were still covered by sand and debris, until excavations around 1880 revealed more of its hidden details. The Great Hypostyle Hall is the centerpiece. Massive columns topped with sistrum-shaped capitals bear the face of Hathor on each side, supporting a richly decorated ceiling. Both columns and roof surfaces are packed with carved reliefs and painted scenes that once glowed with vivid colors. Hieroglyphic inscriptions narrate myths, rituals, and royal dedications. While nearby artifacts like the famous Dendera zodiac show the temple's link to astronomical knowledge. Deep below, in narrow underground chambers, reliefs display the so-called Dendera light, a serpent emerging from an object resembling a bulb held aloft by human figures. Some fringe theories claim this depicts ancient electrical devices. Egyptologists, however, interpret it within religious symbolism. The serpent represents the creator god, Harsomptus, emerging from a lotus, a recurring emblem of birth renewal and cosmic emergence.